developing software to get the benefits. So, let's see. All right, so we know that there's no such thing as perfect, but I think it's perfect if you're at least trying to do the right things in the right way, because we're going to err, it's human. So what you'll find in any high-performing team is really what I'm essentially saying, is there's going to be a desire for, one, collaboration, and you're going to see another characteristic there, which is a desire for continuous improvement. So you're going to see a group of people working very well together, and they're going to also be working to get better and better over time. So how does this happen? Because all companies, I think, want their teams to operate this way. Yet, I can probably count on one hand of all the teams that when I'm coming in and meeting them, that they're actually working this way. I can think of a few teams that do work this way. Like pit crew teams, for example. I mean, they got to be on point. They've got to work really tight, really well together. You know, otherwise somebody's gonna, the worst happen if they're not collaborating. You hear a lot of companies use this word, but here's the thing: collaboration cannot be mandated. You can't force people to collaborate. So how do you get a group of people to work together willingly, right? And then also be willing to get better together over time. And I'm going to say it boils down to a couple of things. You've got to get them to be able to work in a kind of empirical way. If you think about software development, right, and many years ago when they were developing software, you start out at the top and you gather all these requirements, you come up with an idea, you go through all of these phases and handoffs. And then maybe about 10 months later or $1.5 million later, no one wants the product. You build the wrong thing, you build it the wrong way, it's null and void, something else is coming out. So it takes a very long time. So an effort to figure out how to be able to respond to this change quickly without falling victim to all of the unknowns, we've got to figure out a way of how to move forward in a complex environment. And complex environments are environments where you know less than you know. Does that make sense? There are more unknowns than there are knowns. So when you're trying to build a product and there's so many things that could go wrong, so many things that you don't even know about. There are things that could go right too, but more that can go wrong. And you start out with this one idea and you document everything that you want it the way you want it. So much is bound to change by the time that due date arrives, a year later or 2 years later. So how do you manage those unknowns? Well, you don't know what you don't know. So what Agile employs is an empirical process, a way of just taking what you do know and taking smaller steps to figure it out. So the more you know and the more you develop, the more you learn, the better you can get at predicting when you can finish, predicting what the people are going to want, or predicting the best platform or technology to use, and so on and so forth. But in order to do that, it requires transparency, right? To be open and honest about what is really happening. So an empirical process is taking the facts of what is happening and then adjusting your plan accordingly. So you're going to be transparent. You've got to inspect, and then you've got to adapt. Right? So in order to continuously improve, you can't improve if you don't know what you're fixing. It's hard to improve if you don't have standards in place. And it's hard to improve on something if the team isn't working well together. So transparency, inspection, and adaptation have to be happening in order to facilitate collaboration and continuous improvement. How do we get people to be transparent, to be open, to be honest, to be courageous, to do these things that's required? To then say, here's what's wrong, let's talk about ways we can fix it, and then let's incorporate this into the way we're doing things. It's very challenging, right? I mean, this is something that we try in the workplace all the time, but that key piece there is that transparency. So in order to support this empirical process or empirical way of solving complex problems, there has to be something that would make people want to do this, right? So let's talk about really quickly. I'm sure we've all worked on some teams. I've worked on the teams, I've led the teams, I've watched teams work together. What are some ways that if a team is low performing, you would say underperforming, what are some of the characteristics that you see happening in that team? What sorts of things are happening or going on a daily basis? Just shout them out.
Infighting.
Infighting? Yeah.
If you ask them all, they say they're unhappy and low performing.
If you ask them if they're happy,
If you survey them.
if you survey them and they say they're unhappy, usually they're low performing. Yes, absolutely. What else?
Missing lots of deadlines.
Oh yeah, missing deadlines. about morale, right? The same thing, you know. So we know what a low performing team looks like, right? Have we worked on them before? Yeah, that's a drag, right? Now, what are some ways to identify a high performing team? Think about what's some of the characteristics when you see a high performing team.
Lots of interactions.
Positive interactions, yes. What else?
People take responsibility.
Yeah, people take responsibility, right? They step up to the plate. What else?
Other teams notice them in a positive way.
Yeah, other teams notice them in a positive way. Good stuff, yes. Anything else come to mind?
They're highly productive.
They're highly productive.
Yeah.
Right, results. Actions speak louder, let the results speak for them. Absolutely. So, there was a project that Google did, Project Aristotle. Anybody heard of it? Heard about Project Aristotle? So they spent like a lot of money, like a lot of time interviewing a lot of folks, asking several questions, surveys, research, data crunching, all kinds of things, because they were in the quest to find what was the secret to the perfect team, like to a high performing perfect team. And basically what they learned was that it boiled down to this thing that they call psychological safety. And psychological safety essentially is basically where people feel safe to be themselves. They feel safe to take interpersonal risks. And those interpersonal risks boil down to two simple things. One, that they are willing to speak up. And two, they're willing to try something new. So if you're willing to speak up about, hey, I need help. I've worked on several teams where, you know, I've got a team, they may not be in the office with us, sometimes they're offshore, and it's like, every time we talk, they're like, oh no, we're fine. And then the day before, you know, the deadline for that sprint or that iteration, you know, then they're needing help, or they didn't get something accomplished because they were afraid to speak up and ask for help. So speaking up to share information, ask for help, give praise, you know, call out opportunities for improvement. Just speaking up, sharing ideas, and the willingness to try something new. So here, the speaking up part is what enables or gives us the transparency, and then the willingness to try something new. That's the inspect and adapt, right? Because I mean, if we're not talking about what the reality of our situation is, what are we fixing? So we're likely fixing the wrong problem. So we really have to be in a place that we're willing to feel safe to be ourselves, to share, to speak up, and to try something new. So how do we get teams to feel psychologically safe? And really that's what this talk is about, is how do we enable or create an environment where people feel psychologically safe? Because then what happens is trust will organically develop. The people will begin to collaborate because they choose to, because they feel safe to do so, and then you'll get the results. So it's kind of like working backwards to try to figure out how to get teams high performing. So it's not about a carrot and a stick, it's not about giving them more money, or bean bags in a room, or pool tables, or painting the walls a certain color, or laptops, or shared space, or all of these kind of indirect things that people spend money on to try to get teams to perform. It's like they go do all this and they throw the team in the room and say, okay, now collaborate, and it just doesn't work that way. What I believe is that the responsibility or the onus on creating these kinds of conditions for teams falls on the leadership. So we're gonna just explore some things, and this is just through my 20 plus years of experience, and I've worked on the manufacturing floor as an industrial engineer, and I've worked in software development workshops. I've worked in, you know, freight plants like, you know, where it's UPS, like big, huge stuff, and people are moving, and it's just a bunch of grungy guys moving big, hard stuff all day, but they're still people. And we know that software development is a human-powered activity, so we might want to figure out how humans work. So that might be helpful. So we're just going to explore these three keys. And I'll start with this concept. So what do you see here on the screen?
Football.
That's interesting. I like that. Football, soccer ball, right? Essentially it is. I love this photo because it's interesting. You know, our brains will cover in that white space and create that image. That has absolutely nothing to do with the talk, but I just love that concept. If I think about it deeper, maybe it will one day and I'll connect it somehow. But I like the way that you saw pentagons, and then you saw, or like I saw, or we all eventually end up seeing that it's a soccer ball. So is anyone familiar with, I don't know if I'm saying it right, Gestalt psychology. So you know everything. Come on. It's good. I like that. So I'm sure you've heard at some point this term called the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Oh, anyone not hear of that? No? You've heard of it before? So this is often misinterpreted. And I stumbled upon this one day because I love like working with teams and figuring out ways to serve them and help them get better. And I'm always reading everything I can get my hands on. And I always heard this. I said, let me explore this concept more. And what I found out was very interesting, that it is misquoted and misinterpreted all the time. And it's just in the simple words of greater. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And it gives you this concept that maybe that soccer ball is greater than the little bitty pentagons that make it up. Or maybe your team is greater together than the individuals that make it up. And I don't like that concept. It kind of disturbed me. So to think of something that's greater or better together, or together everyone achieves more. I get the concept, but here's what I found very interesting. It's the whole is other than the sum of its parts. The whole is other. So it's not greater, it's not better, it's just other. So I thought about this and I'm thinking about how the team members make up a team. And instead of telling them, we're greater together, we're better together, what it revealed to me is that this group of individuals, that they're individually on their own, with their own responsibility, their own function, and they come together. But when they come together, they then create a completely separate entity as a team. And I'm just like, wow, that's interesting. And it really proved true because I remember I was working at apartments.com and I was leading the web team. So when you go to apartments.com, I was leading that team, and then the mobile app and our branding and awareness. And some of the folks that were on the mobile team were also on the web team. But it was so interesting to see how their behaviors would change in our different team meetings. It would create a completely different dynamic. Outside of the fact that I had to basically be a completely different person with each one of those teams, because each one of those teams had like a subculture. And it was easy for me because I have two sons. One's 20 and one's 8 right now, okay? And so when I'm dealing with Dorian, my interactions with Dorian is completely different than when I'm with Dylan. And with Dylan, he does something like, hey buddy, high five, way to go, hey Tiger, mommy loves you. But then with Dorian, the conversation is much like, hey, get your act together, I will come up to that school, okay? It's just very different. And I noticed that with one team, I had to be more, just a very different personality, still very effective in driving the results, but I had to switch up my leadership style and switch up whether I was going to be teaching or facilitating or mentoring or coaching, depending on the team and what we were working on. So I'm thinking, I feel like a parent all the time. What if these individual teams made up of these people are like its own human self? So then I started digging, and then I came to this, right? So I'm going to treat my teams as their own separate entity. And then, if you've heard of Tuckman's model of group development, Tuckman's model, it's a very interesting model. It says that basically teams go through stages: storming, forming, norming, and I think like the last, performing, that's high performing, and then adjourning. So when forming happens, they're just, they're getting, everybody's playing nice, everyone acts like a stranger to one another, and they move through these phases as they become high performing. So once they start getting to know each other, and they start gelling, and they start performing, right? So at first I had been using that, but when I came with this concept, I thought to myself, if my team made up of a bunch of pentagons, or little humans, when they come together, they create like this own entity, this whole human. What if I deal with them as if they were Dylan or Dorian? And so, like as a parent, every stage of development for your child, or as a human, requires something different. So I started looking into human development, and what I found was really interesting, really interesting. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs, human needs, right? And you see right at the bottom, physiological needs, like food, water, shelter, transportation, all those kind of things, your basic needs have to be met before you can move to the next level. This is why, like he talked about earlier, I serve the inner city youth. And a lot of times their basic needs are not met. They don't have food, running water, clothing, transportation, and shelter. So they never are able to move up this rung to get to the place of realizing their full potential and being, positive contributors to society, because they're still stuck down here. They don't feel safe in their neighborhoods, right? So it's kind of like, how do we get this piece so they can move up the level of esteem and feeling accomplishment, graduating, making contributions to society, and then achieving their full potential. So I said, my team needs certain things met at each level in order for them to move to high performing and maximum level. So what does my child need when he's born? These things. And it's so interesting that right at the bottom here, it says physiological here, but then in Aristotle's project, it's psychological. And I'm thinking, well, they're both. There's the physical and there's the mental, so we need those needs met. And then there's also the word safety. So physiological safety and psychological safety. So I'm like, oh my goodness, I have something here. I think I wanted something. So you look at human needs, like I just talked about, biological requirements, food, clothing, shelter, transportation. And then there's safety, right? From elements. They need order, they need security, they need law and stability, freedom from fear, so they're able to move about and do things. And then that third level, once you move through those, is feeling like you belong to something, feeling like you're a part of something. Interpersonal relationships are important. Intimacy, acceptance, behavior, friendship, all of our relationships, motivate how we are. I've heard the saying, I really like that, the quality of your life depends on the quality of your relationships. And I've found that to be true, so I'm holding it as a theory until someone proves me wrong. But friendship, intimacy, all of these things, and I'm thinking, well, how do I establish these things on my team? If my team is its own kind of human, right? Got all the parts, like Marcus the hand, and Joanne was like the leg, like they all make up like this human. How do I serve this human in this way so that they can move to high performing? And so I thought about, what does a team need? Okay, a software development team, their basic needs, they're not developing any software if they don't have computers, if they don't work, they need environments that are set up, they need certain tools, maybe it's Jira, maybe it's GitHub, but whatever it is that they need, and sometimes our Scrum Masters in the Scrum world or project managers, they're tasked with removing these type of impediments. So my role as a leader is to make sure that their basic needs are met. They have a room to work in, a space to sit in. Sometimes we have people join the team and they don't have a laptop yet. So I need to remove all of the noise out of the way so that they can focus on the one thing that they're there for, is to develop products and deliver value. So I'm going to do that for them. So I'm going to make sure that physical environment is there, and then also make sure that what is the safety for a team? So when we think about a human, the safety is around structure and order, create boundaries. So we need clear working agreements. We need values that we're going to live by established, right? We're going to be respectful. We're going to be open. We're going to be committed. We're going to have focus on our work. So values are there. We're going to have welcoming work settings, or the room, even down to, I'm reading a book called Flawless Consulting right now by Peter Block. Anybody ever heard of it? It's an awesome book because I'm trying to be a flawless consultant. I want to serve my clients the best way I can. But he's got this pet peeve about the way rooms are set up, because it affects the lighting, the seating, the way people are facing each other, all these kind of psychological things that come into play that you just don't think about on a daily basis, but I do. So clear roles and responsibilities, so people understand where their role ends and where another person's begins. So once these things are set in place, they've got everything that they need, they understand the way we're going to work, our work processes and all that, good processes in place. If they're broken, I'll fix them. Or I'll work with the team to fix them, rather. And now we can move into this part, the love and belonging. Being on a part of a team where you feel like you know each other. You feel safe to be yourself, so you're going to develop these interpersonal relationships, and then work doesn't feel like so much work anymore, right? So they're affiliated and they understand that they're being part of a group. And then there are other things that I do that go along with that, like having a goal, something to lean towards, having a vision. Sometimes we make up a team name, anything that kind of solidifies this concept right here. So I have 3 ways in which I make these things happen. And that's essentially the talk. And I'll get to it. Now this superwoman right here is my mom. I grew up in a single parent home. And my mom made sure that my physiological needs were met. She also made sure that I attended the best schools possible. Yep, that's my mom. She's dope. She made sure food, clothing, shelter, transportation, hook by crook. She made sure, and then I could go to school and I could learn without worrying about where my next meal is going to come from, right? So I learned that very early to take care of folks from my mom because she did that. And what she did essentially for me is she cleared the path for me to not have to worry, not to be fearful of my needs not being met. And then there's my dad. What he did for me, rest in peace. Actually, his brother passed away. You know, we're gonna have his services tomorrow. And his brother, my uncle, he lived every day like it was a holiday. So he celebrated. So I'll leave you with that, if nothing else. Live every day like it's a holiday. I mean, if you were sad, he was like, I know what you need. You need a drink. Maybe that's why he lived every day like a holiday. He probably had a drink every day. I don't know, but he lived for a long time. He's about 70 years old. So, yeah, my dad. It didn't matter what I did. If I just ran up the block, rode a bike, if I got a certificate for participation, I didn't even have to win the contest. When I would come over to his house, it would be on the wall. It didn't matter. And so he made me feel so loved because he just appreciated and accepted what I did. Just even when I was wrong, he would correct the behavior, but he did it in such a way that did not make me feel judged. And it did not make me want to hide and not be myself. So between these two guys, what they did for me is the first step, what you have to do for your teams, is remove the fear, remove the worry, remove the anxiety, remove those things that prevent them from focusing on the work at hand. And how do you do that, right? You create working agreements. You create an environment where people feel safe. When you're facilitating a meeting, you allow others to share their ideas so that they feel accepted and respected. As a leader, that's your responsibility, is to remove fear, making sure that their needs are met so that they can focus and move forward. So these guys are awesome. The second key, and this is the number one question when I'm working with a client, the first thing I'll ask is, what do your teams do for fun? Now, it seems like a weird question, but based on the response I get from the manager or from the director or whoever's leading IT, it's always like, what? Like it's an afterthought or something. And they just don't realize the power of a group of people getting together. This is what helps facilitates those interpersonal relationships. People like to do business with people that they know, like, trust. We hear that all the time. But if we're not doing things together, celebrating small wins or birthdays or whatever, just getting together, having fun, figuring out ways for your team members to get to know one another. Because I believe that we're all connected. Alvin and I were talking about the 6 degrees of separation. I really believe that we're all connected and that success cannot happen without the cooperation of others. That's something that I believe to the core, and it's my why, or why I get up and do what I do every day and why I love it. And when you're talking to someone, you will be amazed at what you can find that you have in common just by striking up a conversation. And you don't have time to do that necessarily when your head's down on the computer, so as a leader, you have to facilitate these kinds of things to happen. If you're working on some very hardcore stuff, there's always break time. I mean, like there are meetings where we're sitting around planning for our next iteration, and I've got a bucket of things, and it's like little known facts about everyone on the team. So I just pull one out and I'll read it. This person has a very bad temper. This is one example. I'll pull it out. This person has a very bad temper, and everyone's naming like this one or two particular folks, but they were way off. It was actually this really nice Indian girl. Everybody was like, oh my God, not you, Shri, not you. And it was like, yes, she's like, and she admitted, she's like, I have a really bad temper. I don't show it at work, but at home, I'm really off the charts. And so everyone was just so tickled, and they immediately felt connected to her. Because I'm sure that they all thought, wow, she really keeps her poise. She's really calm and cool. But to know that she gets home and she's like a screaming head made them feel a little more comfortable around Shri and like more willing to open up. So it's just simple things like that you can incorporate throughout the day. And other things you can get creative. There's all kinds of things you can find online in the team building, like little mini things you can insert. But the goal here is to help your team celebrate and have fun together. You learn better when you have fun. Things feel better when you laugh. And I mean, Jay was telling me some jokes back there. He said, I'll be impressed if you could weave it into your talk. And I'm like, no, I tell jokes horribly. I'll destroy it. But it was really funny. And he had me laughing. He said, did a joke about pie. And then he did a joke about this painter at a church. And it was so funny. And I was laughing and really just lifted my spirits because I was really nervous about speaking. And so that was really great. So thank you for that, Jay. I won't try to tell the joke, but it's really funny. And so yeah, having fun is, I mean, there's so many studies on, you know, how fun incorporates learning and all those things. So remove fear, have fun, and then the final key, you know these guys. The first to go, what did I say? First to go, last to know. I can never get this right. What is the Marine? That saying for Marines, first to go, last to know. Let's roll with that. Like, these are the bad guys, right? This you want on your team, right? Like, hats off to all of our servicemen and women, but the Marines, I've always just loved these guys. But as the leader, you have to go first. You have to be willing to be transparent. You have to be willing to live the values that your team has put together. You have to be willing to be vulnerable and to go first. You be the one to show that it's okay. You open up. Like, one of the things that I do when I go into a team and I'm starting to work with them is that I'll do one-on-ones with every team member. And I'll start with the folks that I believe are the informal leaders, because they're the people who have the ears of the team without the authority. So those are important folks. I'll talk to them first, and I'll just listen, and I'll share things. I'll share, you know, times where I failed, or I've shared times where things were difficult or challenging for me. But I will go first, and I'll be the first to be vulnerable. In a meeting, I'll share an idea first, and I'll let others see that it's okay to share ideas, no matter how, you know, far off they may seem. And I go first to make people feel accepted, and I go first to make people feel respected. And when they see that, they'll follow my lead, because my goal is to first have them trust me, and then trust each other. And so if you go through the steps as a leader, you go first, you set the stage, you lead by example of these values and everything that you want. You don't withhold information yourself. That's one of the things. You ask for help when you need it. You be the example. You remove fear, and you have fun together. And pretty much those are the 3 keys to what I feel will help set the stage for your team to get those results. So basically, if you set these things in place, you make sure the basic needs are met, and the team has an opportunity to develop relationships with one another, and you make that possible. You're creating the stage for trust to organically develop. It's going to happen. You don't have to force it. In fact, you can. And when people feel that way and they feel connected and have all their needs met, then they will begin to collaborate. And then you work through an empirical process to help them improve time over time, or iteration over iteration, or every so often. So collaboration and continuous improvement is what a high-performing, you're going to find that in a high-performing team. And the results are going to be like we named. They're going to be productive. Other teams are going to look at them in a positive way, and all the other things that we named, and they're going to get results. So we have to kind of set the soil up in order to watch it, to make it happen. So that's my bits. That's it. Let's chat. Any questions? Sure.
So first you didn't mention ownership.
Ownership. Yeah. So, yeah, you know, this talk is, like I said, there's some other things that kind of go into it, like having a team goal is really important. Definitely, collective ownership is something that you'll get here. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Even to me, in my experience, and even more important, individual ownership.
Yes.
Knowing exactly what your have as your university.
Yes. You know where I've kind of put that? That esteem. So like we've got to get through these steps first, right? And then it's kind of like, there's another presentation I do where I kind of use this one, and it's like me, I, we. And the team, like when you're a child, you're dependent, someone makes all the decisions for you. You guys keep it like me. You don't care if mommy's tired or you're hungry. You don't care what's going on. I'm hungry, I want to eat. It's all about me. And then when you become an adult, it's I take care of myself. I pay my bills. I go to work. It's about I. But then that third level is when you get to what my fundamental belief and my why is that it's we. That I exist because of you, and that we're all connected, and success doesn't happen without the cooperation of others. So for a team, that self-actualization is that we understanding. And the esteem part, that's where individuals, they feel like they're contributing now. and they're having little accomplishments, they're doing their work, and they're able to do this and do it effectively and collaboratively because you set the stage, you've laid the foundation for it to happen. So kind of that's where the, talk. Does that answer? Yeah. Well, you had a question?
Yeah, so, I think it's a little bit about what you just said, but, you talked about for safety, we should have like working agreements or clear roles and responsibilities. How do you balance that where you don't get into a place where somebody says, this is my job description, and then something comes along that's a little different, like, no, that's not my job. Because you want somebody to say, maybe that's not exactly my job, but I'm gonna do what's good for the team at this point. But to me, it seems like you could easily go too far and like, this is everybody's role, especially in a very small team. And now you've got everybody saying, well, that doesn't quite fit what I'm supposed to do, so I'm not gonna do it.
Right. So how I've handled that in the past, I like to think of roles as a very lightweight kind of thing, not titles. There's a difference. So like in Scrum, there's a framework called Scrum that Agile teams use. And they're very clear that there are only 3 roles, and each of those roles have responsibilities. So that one of the roles is the development team, and what they encourage is for people not to be called testers or QA or BA, but that's never gonna happen because people love their titles, and that's fine. I work around that. So the way I look at it is, you have a title at work, yes, but on this team, there are roles and responsibilities. Today, Johnny might be the Scrum Master playing this role, but if you're in this role, these are the things that need to be covered in order for our team to be successful. And the other way I handle that is, when we put together the work agreements, that is a collaborative effort. So there's an opportunity for the team to collaborate. It's a kind of a forced collaboration, but they'll have ownership of those roles. And when people create something, their own ideas, like whose ideas are the best ideas? Their own. I mean, I can come up with how we should do it, but that's not my role as the leader. I have to facilitate those conversations. And okay, so guys, if we're gonna accept trust or focus or openness or commitment, right? Or respect as some of our values, what does that look like? How do we know that we're respecting each other? I'll say, oh, well, we let each other finish our thoughts. That becomes one of our working agreements. They come up with that and then we create, okay, so for this role, guys, what do we think needs to happen in order for our software to be, the best quality possible? Like what do we need to do to test it? Okay, so if you're playing this role today or in this iteration, these are the things that you need to do. And then we come up with that together. And the other thing we do is we frequently review those working agreements. We don't let them get stale. I mean, just like in a relationship, I do this and my boyfriend thinks I'm crazy because I bring this stuff home. But it's like, it's time for a retro. How are we doing? What are opportunities to improve? You still like me? I still like you? Okay, we good, let's go. But it makes sense to kind of check in every so often to see if it's still working for you. So I don't really get too deep into titles or roles because then people say, oh, that's not my job, So I think that approach, does that kind of answer it? Like I kind of hit it from 2 ways. I don't think about titles, I just think about what needs to be done and who's gonna volunteer to do it, right? But when the team likes each other, they're willing to be like, oh no, I'll do it this week, it's cool, I'll do it. You kind of get those things, but you have to set this foundation, right? Good soil.
Yeah, so first off, I want to commend you and thank you. This is like a wonderful talk.
Oh.
For the longest time, because I come from a design background, I've never seen someone connect, Agile is always sold as a functional benefit, right? Like you can get more widgets per time. And no one has ever connected the social and emotional needs in a way that you've explained it, which is it's really incredible. You're definitely on the right track. Because I don't think anyone's tying Agile processes to that. At least not that I've seen until tonight. So. My question was what you consider, if that red circle is what you consider the MVP for a performing team.
I like that. Oh, I like that. Can I use that?
Yeah, right. Go for it. So my question is that whether just the first 2 or the 3 would you consider MVP, and then what's the time frame to seeing that it's implemented? Is it 2 weeks? Is it a month?
Good question. I like that one. So people don't like to talk about trust at work, right? We always say, we need trust. trust me, trust. But it's such a wonky word because it kind of spills over from our personal lives and people feel like they can't trust each other and they're like, well, what does trust mean? Does it mean reliability? Does it mean integrity? You know, what does it mean? Does it mean I need to tell you my life story? But really all it is when I'm at work is really, I'm just essentially giving love. And love means no judgments, like at the base of it. You are not afraid to be yourself because you're not going to be judged. And that is really the reason why humans really hold back. We're afraid to be transparent with our friends sometimes, in our families, in our relationships, because in our minds, we're really considering what are they going to think about me? What are they going to say about me? Are they going to withhold their love? Are they still going to like me? Are they still going to want to play with me? So we don't really want to talk about that kind of thing because it's really weird. It's really weird at work. But here's the thing. I read a book called How to Convince Them in 90 Seconds or Less by Michael Moore. And he does this whole thing where he'll hit the streets of New York, okay, not the friendliest folks. And he's got like a bet going that he'll walk up to a perfect stranger and in 90 seconds, that person's gonna be like his buddy. And it is just a very interesting book. So I really do not subscribe to the fact that it takes a long time to build trust. You don't need, and the thing is, you don't need these deep levels of intimate trust in order to get to collaboration. You just need people in a room that feel like they know enough about one another that you've got to be competent. So I've got skilled, competent people on the team, which I've never had a problem with. It like is literally always the leadership. It's like never the developers. But, and so you know them, you kind of feel like you like them a little bit, and then you respect them, and then, or you kind of trust them, you feel like you know them. So building that bridge. So what I do is I really think deeply about exercises or the way that we assemble to kind of figure out how do I get these people to know each other really quickly? How do I get these people to like each other really quickly? When you think about when you're a kid, you're on the playground for 2 minutes, you found a buddy, you're running off in the sand, mommy's looking for you, you found your friend. We're still those same people. That's why I have fun when there's a bunch of kids, because I swear we just forget how to have fun. We forget how to make friends right away. I mean, this is something that it just gets stumped out of us. You know why? Because over time, when you're a kid, you don't think about not being yourself. You just kind of, you scratch and you dig, you're just yourself and your nose is running, you don't care, right? But then you start becoming aware of all these things as an adult because people are pointing out to you. You didn't do this right, you didn't do that right, what about this, what about that? So we start correcting until we become these characters that are socially acceptable. And then we forget who we are and we forget how to have fun. So all I do is I just do my best to break all that down, remove the fear, and just go right in at it and start helping them get to know each other. Let's eat lunch, let's go eat lunch together. And I'll find out something about you, and I'm like, oh, did you know Philip had the same thing? Oh, Philip plays guitar too. Maybe you guys, when is he playing? Let's go down and see him play tonight. We'll go down, we'll see him play, whatever, have some beers. Just do anything like that, but I really believe it can happen like that. I don't think you need many, many months. But now, to begin to see the results from that, those instant relationships you're building, it depends on what you're building. But for me, within 3 months, I'm gonna turn things around. The smallest time I just did, I had a contract at Northern Trust, 4 teams, severely underperforming for about 14 months. And they were like, oh, it's the Scrum Masters, it's the Scrum Masters, they need to be fired, get them out of here. And then they called me in, they're like, here's what's happening, what do you think is the problem? And I'm like, well, what do they do for fun? That's my question. I'm like, what? And I said, okay, I'm listening. I said, let me listen in on a couple calls, and then I'll let you know what I think. Listen in on a couple calls, yeah, the Scrum Masters could have been better Scrum Masters. But essentially, I realized who was the problem. It was the people calling for help. No, I couldn't tell them that because they signed my check. So I said, okay, I think I understand what's going on. I'm gonna put together my findings. And if you give me 3 sprints, they were doing 3-week sprints, so whatever that is. Give me 3 sprints, and I think I'll have it solved. I said, here's what I need from you. I need you to trust me. I'm gonna ask you guys to just back up from the meetings, just for 3 sprints. I will keep you informed, I will put together reports, because they just wanted to they were all freaking out and bringing all that fear-based energy to the teams. They're not gonna speak up and tell the truth. The manager's on the phone. So back up, just give me 3 weeks. I'm gonna do a reboot, retrain, reorganize, and I'm gonna let you know. And I put together a Gantt chart and everything so they can know every step that I was doing. And in 3 sprints, turn the whole thing around. Because it was the leadership that was getting in the way, preventing transparency, which means you won't be able to fix what's really broken because you're not going to talk about what's really broken. Wait, how did I even get there?
So, would you like a short, petty question or a long, complicated question?
Whatever you feel most comfortable.
Okay, let's go with the long question. So, what are the failure modes here? As in, like, what are the modes where you say, what are the modes where, like, when you start to see these signs, you have to say, like, okay, let's stop this, let's try something that's not this, or that's not agile. This is not working for the team. What are the failure modes here?
The failure modes. So you mean like, let's see, well, here, I'm very results driven. So I love metrics. People don't like metrics because, like, oh, what you measure, people, you know, it makes people change their behavior. Well, yeah, I want that to happen. I want the behavior to happen. But you can also tell when metrics begin to become stale, so you just move to new metrics, right? So if the team isn't producing, if our goal is to deliver value, and we can somehow quantify that value in each iteration, and we're not delivering, that's the first sign for me. When meetings are not hitting the objective. So any meeting I run, it's gonna have an objective, and it's gonna have an agenda. And so by the end of that meeting, I'll know the meeting was successful if we feel that we met that objective. But that objective is gonna be something we agree on in the beginning when we review the agenda. So what I do is I kind of create these boundaries that force you to be able to get real results at the end. So really I'm just looking at what are we after and are we hitting the target? Does that make sense? Does that answer? I think I'm
I
not.
was thinking more along the lines of, does anybody else have any questions? Because this might get a bit long. So like, right, like surgical model, one of the major failures of surgical model is that it creates a bottleneck, right? And if we consider having a conflict between the surgeon and the assistants, things get really nasty. One of the major issues with sort of like waterfall is it causes people to sort of regiment, right? Where they say, pass it along, we're not going to like deal with it ever again. So what are the issues where people take this too far, like the things that you're advocating, what are the signs that people take it too far and need to sort of dial it down again?
Okay, like if we take the love and belonging kind of too far, or like if they take money, like having fun, they start having too much fun, you mean, like that they can't get work done?
Yeah, like, or maybe it can be like, oh yeah, they're sort of so invested in fun that now people who don't have the same fun interest, say a person who's like working just wants to get home to their kids, no longer feels like they belong. Stuff like that can be one example of failure.
Okay, so like so basically what he's asking is, like, what are some of the failure modes to something like this? What are some symptoms or signs that let you know that, you know, you've gone off the spectrum of what it means to have fun or what it means to remove fear? So I like boundaries because I feel like boundaries keep you, you know, how do I explain this? I'm saying boundaries, but to me, like, I'm setting structure, that's what I want to say. I'm putting structures in place to help me understand when we're going above or below those control limits, right? If these negative behaviors begin to affect our results, that's the first thing I want to look at. Like what, because we're constantly inspecting and adapting, that's the whole thing. So the team I talked about at Northern Trust, how did they work together for 14 months with the same, like how do you have a team that literally delivers 0 working software for 14 months? What? I'm gonna give you 2 sprints. If you're not delivering, now we're gonna have some real conversations and we're gonna figure out what it may be. So I'm not going to let things go on. So if things are happening where, okay, the guy feels like he's no longer part of the team, maybe because he can't make it for drinks one night, well, we'll figure, maybe one of the members don't drink. So we'll figure out something to do that they can feel incorporated in, right? When I have teams offshore, sometimes I did one thing you know, I used to have those class photos back in high school and grammar school. I put together like a class photo of everybody. Put like you know, you have the principal and everybody's face in there. So you just kind of find creative ways to make sure everybody belongs in that situation. But I try to create structures and metrics and meet frequently to inspect on what we're doing to make sure that we're not getting outside of ourselves. That's kind of the best way. Anybody have a better answer?
Let me try to flip it the other way around. Have you ever met a team that are so dispersed or different that they couldn't get to work together?
This is like that question in an interview. Tell me about a time you failed at something. I'm like, doesn't happen. Here's why, because earlier in my career, although I had the opportunity to work with teams as an industrial engineer, I learned a lot about human beings at work. And I learned the hard way. You know, I was facilitating an improvement process in the liquor room. I worked for a company called Gate Gourmet. You know, when you're on the plane, the cart comes down with the food, you would not believe what goes into getting those peanuts and pop on that cart. It is insane. Okay, so I was doing a continuous improvement project, and I had the numbers, it was perfect. I knew everything, where it was gonna move, I calculated, recalculated, and I came out and okay, here, you implement. And the first day it completely flopped. It ended up saving the company that department anyway, about $600,000 a year. Plus, I did not eliminate 3 FTEs, but those 3 FTEs were able to go fill other open positions. So we moved them from one area to another. It was a highly secured area, the liquor department, and it had the most seasoned employees in there. They were making the most money, the highest paid. They did not like me messing with their process. And I made that fatal mistake. They let that whole thing flop because no one knew how it ran, because they would run all the supervisors away. No one wanted to manage them. It was an important part because, do you know liquor is a no-go item on an airplane? If you've ever been delayed, it could be because you're missing a coffee pot or liquor. They will not pull off without those things, or tongues. I'm not kidding, it's crazy. So you don't mess with the liquor room, right? But what I realized was I made the cardinal mistake of not involving them in my findings, involving them in any of the process. I was the industrial engineer, I had the plan, and I'm gonna come on and do it myself. But I figured out Nancy was the ringleader because she was the informal leader. That's my first lesson about informal leaders. So I learned a lot in my early career before I really got a chance to start actually leading teams. So I just took kind of these lessons with where I'm leading. And to get closer to your question, people are people. I just believe that. Like, I don't care where you come from, and I've been all over the country doing things and working with people, and when you start talking to people, wow, oh, your mom was a single mom too. Oh, you grew up poor. Like, oh, you struggled in math too. Or, oh, you like skateboarding. So, if you were just courageous enough or willing to have a conversation. But you know what? They have us so darn afraid of one another that we won't just talk and find out how connected we really are, how much we have in common, build those bridges, and you're like, hey, my neighbor's pretty cool. I don't feel weird when I had a neighbor, and I'm like, every day I try to just go in, and I'm like, that's so sad, we should know our neighbors. And then one day, we just struck up a conversation, and she's like my best friend. Now I'm looking for her, like, where is Sarah? But it's just people. So when I run into challenges, though, I do have challenges, but I just have to remind myself, they're just people. And then I'm like, we're just big kids. How do I get to the kid in you? Because kids are awesome. They tell you the truth. They do what they want to do. They don't care what you think. My son, I have this one hairstyle I wear, and I know I look different from the photo because you'll see me again, it'll be different. And I had this one hairstyle, and he's like, I don't like that, mommy. What is that piece across? What is that piece across there? That doesn't look nice. And I know you was telling the truth because I had a couple other people comment like that wasn't the best style, But they just don't have any hang-ups like that, and it's just so awesome place to be. So I just try to remember that when I'm working with people. And really, I'll tell you my trick. Most people just want to be heard. Most people just want to be understood. So I'm like, okay, Mark's having an issue today. What's going on, Mark? Hey man, what's up? How are things going? Did you go to a soccer game last night? Whatever. Just give them what's going on. They just want to vent. I let them. Wow. I don't try to solve it. I don't try to fix it. I just go into therapist mode. So people are people. That's just really it. And we literally have the same wiring on the inside. Some people's brains work a little different, but ultimately, the wiring, you know what I mean, is the same. The function of the limbic brain is the same in everybody's brain. Unless there's some defects, and then, you deal with that. But other than that, we're all wired the same. Human motivation is the same. We have different triggers, but it all works the same. So I just try to remember that system. And I'm a systems thinker from engineering, so I'm like, they're just people. they're just people. What do they need? They need to be understood. How can I make them feel better so they can do better? And that's just really it. That's it. I love them. That's all I do. People don't get a lot of love. And I'm rambling. Any more questions? Nope. All right, well, that's my time. Thank you. What time is it?